All right, welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining us today. We have Angela. She is our libertarian in California. David, he is our liberal in California. Matt is our Senate Republican in the great state of Texas. And Joe, he is up in Idaho representing our Green Party. First topic is worldwide international news, but it's gotten very little coverage here in the United States. And these topics have been provided to our guests previously, so they had an opportunity to formulate their responses to what we're going to talk about today. And that way you as a viewer get the best opportunity to see that side's options, right? So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Like if I'm doing a great job. If you have any comments to what they're saying, comment those in the comment section below, whether you agree or disagree. That's going to be fun. So our first topic today revolves around international news and India. In India, they right now are impacted by a 250 million worker strike across the country. This in turn, Angela, is almost the whole population of the United States. I mean, we have 350 million Americans. India has 250 million people striking. Can you tell me what's going on and your thoughts behind it as a libertarian?
Well, I have a lot of compassion for the people in India who've lost their jobs due to the lockdowns. Certainly farmers, that's sort of what this is focusing on right now, and migrant workers. But asking the government to pay everyone to quit working and to increase farm subsidies and welfare is not the answer. People need to be free to make their own incomes, own property, and engage in commerce. It seems like a lot of the strikers and people who are protesting are related to the Communist Party. And my thoughts are that we should never overthrow the government to install a stronger, more authoritarian government. We need to scale back government, especially in times of economic crisis.
So isn't this something pushing back on that though, Angela? Isn't this in the tool belt of what the Americans can use on our side of things, right? So Trump went out and he did a lot of bailouts for the farmers during COVID, but Modi is really changing how farmers can do business over there, pushing back. I mean, isn't this something that the Americans that we have at our disposal?
Protesting, yes, but farm subsidies in the United States mostly pop up in very large agricultural conglomerations. People don't quite understand how farming works in the United States. We have a consolidation of farming under very large powers and a handful of small farmers who are beholden unto corporate subsidies. In countries where corporate subsidies have been slashed, we find that free market enterprise helps people out, it reduces prices, and it creates more balance in our economy.
Matt, is this an attack on the right from Modi? You're a Senate Republican. Is this really coming from a communist regime or a communist set of values?
I think it very well may be coming exactly from that. The problem that we have is anytime people reserve the right to strike in a more traditional union setting, it's primarily because, the whole reason why we have unionization for things like in the United States and around the world, it's to keep employees safe, to keep them fairly paid. Yes, COVID, yes, a pandemic, yes, something that hits globally, only hits every 100 years. But do we need to be making sure that every single person is taken care of during this? To an extent, but not paying people, not subsidizing in a way that's going to ultimately change the way they go to market. Say that's something that cannot continue, and it's not something that's going to come to the United States. We have to be very specific on who we bail out and where these funds go. And I don't think it's going to be in the farming industry in the United States, and it's going to be on the industries that keep us going. If it's farming, if it's airlines, if it's travel, whatever it is, it will not happen here.
David, you're a liberal in California. From India's standpoint, I mean, we've got a lot of people over there that are barely above the poverty line, and most of them are living in poverty. What does this strike mean for those folks, the normal, the everyday people?
This is an exercise in democracy. And really fundamentally, from what I've been able to read and understand about the demands, it comes down to these farmers and the workers around the country demanding democracy. And small d democracy in the sense of a government that works to help and protect the people that it is responsible to. And some of the key demands, now the strike, which happened, my understanding was a couple weeks ago, was the quarter billion, biggest strike in history. What's happened since is that the farmers have continued their march to Delhi, and the government has basically set up a barrier around Delhi to try and stop the protests. Okay, fundamentally speaking, if you believe in free speech, if you believe in the people's right to redress their government, like this is absolutely bordering on like fascist crackdown against the people trying to redress, have their grievances redressed. And one of the biggest things they're protesting is that they have the minimum price sets for the government to buy goods from farmers. And Modi's parliament had just passed recently 4 different bills, or I believe, sorry, it was 3 bills that the farmers believe are eroding the ability of the farmers to rely on those price backings. Okay, now in India, where you have almost 60% of the population who depend on farming for their income, right, this is a massive issue throughout the entire country. It goes fundamentally to the idea of what government is doing for the people themselves. In America, I think Angela actually described our farming system like very accurately, where agribusiness has really taken over a lot of it. We only have 10% of our population who are relying on agriculture for their income. So fundamentally speaking, what's going on is democracy over in India. They're asking the government to redress this. There is no reason that this should have been passed now. Like, this is basically free market deregulation, trying to attack the rights of farmers and the people, trying to erode the protections that they have had in the past. And the farmers are very upset about this, and they want to be heard, and they want to be at the table when these things are discussed and when these things are negotiated. Because most people, from the reading I've done, have asked, why in the world would they do this during COVID? And the only answer is the classic shock doctrine, as discussed by Naomi Klein, where they think that the farmers won't be able to successfully mount an attack against this, a defense against this power grab by the corporate entities that want to make India's agribusiness more like America's, whereas much more in the hands of corporations who are able to continue further exploiting these workers. So for me, this is an issue of democracy. I am with the farmers. I am with the striking workers, and I think that the government needs to bring them in and give them a seat at the table.
Joe, you were a Green Party member in Idaho, and the Green Party a lot of times really aligns with these farmers. But doesn't the corporatization of farming make it more affordable for everybody to have the ability to eat and purchase food?
One of the problems that we're dealing with in India is there's a long history of problems with agriculture. What Modi's doing is essentially what David brought up. This is a land grab by corporations. It's a land grab by the caste system that Modi supports. This disenfranchises the poor people in India who rely on the agricultural business. 60% of the population. That's going to shift an awful lot of them into industry centers, a lot like we did here in the US during the Industrial Revolution. So that changes the entire dichotomy of what's going on in the Indian culture. You're moving from an agricultural, you're moving from rural communities, and forcing the culture to shift to an industrial nation. Not necessarily a good thing, because you're trying to replicate American agriculture, and we already have a problem with the way agriculture is handled here in America. As brought up by Angela, corporations own the majority of the agriculture here in the United States.